Hi guys, happy Tuesday. Let's talk of Mice and Men, chapter 4. Okay, this is our chapter we really get to spend some time with Crooks, the stableback. We're gonna start off, and you see his room. Now he has his own space. He lives in the stables, but he has a room in the stables, and he has his own room. Therefore, he has more things he can keep. His position is pretty permanent. On the surface, that sounds kind of nice, right? You get to have your own space, you get to keep more stuff, you don't live in a room with 8 other people. But it's also because he's not welcome with the other people. And there's a difference between choosing to have your own space and being forced to be away from everybody else. So we can get a picture of who he is and what he looks like and who he is as a person looking at his room. You can learn a lot about someone by looking at their room, okay? He says that he's a proud and aloof man. He kept his distance and demanded that other people keep theirs. We'll get more in on that as we go. And his spine is crooked. He has an injury. It's eternal. It's a life injury. And so his body is bent. So when we start off, it's Saturday night, and you can hear the horses moving around, but he's in his room, and he's rubbing liniment, they call it, on his spine. Essentially, that's like a muscle relaxing, tension easing issues, like a biofreeze or a tiger balm or something along those lines, because his back hurts all the time because it's bent. And your muscles aren't, supposed to bend like that all the time, so his back's pretty sore, so he's working on that. And Lenny comes in. And just comes in big smile, and Crooks is like, "Get out. This is my room. No one's any right to be in here but me." And Lenny's like, I just came to look at the puppy, and I saw the light on in here. And Crooks is like, "Yeah, I have a light. Get out. I'm not wanted in the bunkhouse, so you aren't wanted in my room." Lenny says, "But why aren't you wanted?" Lenny doesn't get it, because Lenny's a kid. And kids don't really understand the background of racism. They don't understand where that comes from. They just see someone who looks over them, and they're like, okay. You see a lot of kids who even have fairly racist parents who are more than willing to, when they're very young, play with children of other skin colors because kids don't care. You're not born racist. That happens to you, okay? He says, "Why aren't you wanted?" And Crooks says, "Because I'm black. They play cards in there, and I can't play because I'm black, and they say I stink. Well, I tell you, I'll stink to me." So this tells us a little bit about Crooks. I imagine that if he were wanted and included, he would probably feel really willing to want and include. But because he is excluded, and they are unkind to him, he says, "Fine. If I'm not welcome here, you're not welcome in my space either." And he is really unhappy about Lenny coming in. Lenny doesn't get it. He's like, "Oh, well, everybody else left. And so I saw your light on." Lenny's bored and he's lonely, so he finds the nearest person, and it happens to be Crooks. Crooks is like, "What do you want?" Lenny's like, I just wanted to come in and sit." And Crooks just stares at him, pulls his glasses on, and he was like, "Why are you even in the barn? You have anything to do with horses." And Lenny's like, "Oh, my puppies are here. I go in to see my puppy." And Crooks is like, "Then go see your pup and don't come in my room where you're not wanted." And Lenny was like, "Well, I look at him a little bit, but then I'm not supposed to pet him very much." And he's standing in the doorway, right? And every time he talks, he steps in, then forgets and steps back. And Crooks was like, "Well, that's because you're going to disturb the dogs and the mama dog. Don't do that." And finally, Lenny just sitting there and smiling at him, and Crooks is like, "Fine, come in." It's kind of like when you have a younger sibling, you don't want them in your room, and they stand at the door and talk to you forever, and you're just like, "Fine, just come in my room. It's easier that way." Same concept here. Okay? Kirk's like, "If you won't leave me alone, just come in and sit." And he starts to get a little more friendly, so everyone else is in town. And they're like, "Yeah, well, but Candy's not in town. Candy's still here. He's working with a pencil." And Crooks is like, what is he working on? He was like, "About the rabbits." Crooks like, "You're insane. What are you talking about, rabbits?" And Lenny's like, "We're going to get rabbits, and I'm going to tend to them and give them water and things." And Crooks is like, "Whew, okay, you crazy." Because if you didn't know about their plan, that's a weird thing for a dude to just go on about. And Crooks is like, "I don't blame the guy you travel with keeping you out of sight." Lenny's like, We're going to do it. We're going to get our own place, and we're going to live on a fat of the land. And Crook's like, settle down, sit down here, chill out. And so Crooks asks, he starts being really mean to Lenny. And you can easily blame Crooks for that because what he's doing isn't okay. It's not okay to be mean to somebody. But we're looking at power and what power does to people and how power works is the more power you have, the more you want. But the less power you have, the more you want. And Crooks doesn't have any power here. He is at the bottom of the rung. But everyone else is gone, and Lenny isn't racist. He doesn't understand enough to understand the concept of it or why the people are acting like that. He doesn't get it, okay? So it gives Crooks some power. Crooks is smarter than Lenny. For the first time in his life, he gets to have the upper hand on somebody else. And he's going to take it. And he's not going to be kind. He asks Lenny, so do you guys understand what George is talking about? Lenny's like, no. Sometimes, but not always. And Crooks is like, look, I was born right here in California. My old man had a chicken ranch, about 10 acres. When white kids come to play at our place, sometimes I went to play with them. Some of them were nice, but my old man didn't like that. I didn't know till later why he didn't like that, but I know now. There was another colored family for miles around. There ain't another colored man on this ranch. There's one family in Soledad. If I say something, well, it's just a nigger saying it. And that's what he says. He's basically saying that, because no one else here looks like me, I am completely invalidated as a human. Let that sink in for a second. Do you ever feel like, we'll take a step back and put it into a context that, if you haven't experienced racism, then you can put it into a context that you'd understand. Have you ever been in a room full of adults, and they're all talking about adult things, and you try to add into the conversation, they're like, okay, buddy, and kind of pat you on the head, patronize you, and act like what you have to say doesn't matter because you're a child? The same thing happens to Crooks. When he says something, white people act like it doesn't matter because he's black. Okay? So he's used to being ignored and mistreated, and this is the first time in his life he can mistreat somebody else and get away with it. And so he's going to. And he's talking about how everyone, when you're white, you get to hang out. You get to talk with other people. You get to spend time together, and that's nice. But he doesn't get to do that. He's alone, and he's lonely every single day, and that takes a toll on a person. And he starts listening. He says, you know what? What if George doesn't come back? Maybe he doesn't come back. What are you going to do? And Lenny's like, what? He's like, what if George never comes home? Never hear about him ever again. What are you going to do? Lenny's like, well, George won't do that. What? Do you think George will do that? And Lenny gets scared. Same thing if you tell a kid, well, I wouldn't be too worried about the monster under your bed. They're like, the what? And they're scared. Same thing. He's like, well, what if George never comes back? What are you going to do? It's like telling a kid who's not with his mom, with a babysitter, what if your mom never comes home? What if you're stuck here forever? And they're terrified. Same thing. Crooks is taunting Lenny. And Crooks is like, he might decide he doesn't come back. He might get killed. And Lenny's like, no, he wouldn't. He won't get hurt because he's careful. What are you going to do if he doesn't come back then? And Lenny's like, what are you doing? That's not true. George isn't hurt. And Crooks is like, you want me to tell you what'll happen? They'll take you to the booby hatch. They'll tie you up with a collar like a dog. He's referencing an insane asylum, or people, which was what they used for care of people who had mental inefficiencies or mental troubles in the 1930s. And he's not wrong. They called it a hatch for a reason. You were essentially put in a cage and let on a leash like a dog. They used electroshock therapy. They used starvation. If you read any of the history of the 1930s and what asylums were like leading up to that even, it's pretty horrific. Rampant abuse of the people who live there by the orderlies, by the attendants, by the guards. Horrifying conditions, just awful. George knows that. Crooks knows it too, and he also knows enough to know that, Lenny's not going to survive there. So he starts to scare Lenny, and Lenny gets really scared and gets angry. He stands up and he said, who hurt George? Now, we know what happens when Lenny's upset. We've only ever seen him scared. We've never seen him angry, but we know what he can do when he's just simply scared. And Crooks realizes that's danger, and he's like, he just kind of moves out of the way. He's like, George isn't hurt. I was just supposing. Everything's fine. He's all right. He'll be all right. And Lenny's like, why do you want to hurt George? And he's like, dude, sit down. George isn't hurt. And Lenny sits down, he's like, no, I don't talk about hurting George. And then Crooks has a bit of a heart-to-heart with Lenny. This is probably the first white person he's ever gotten to have a heart-to-heart with, but probably no one in his life, because Crooks has been working since a very young age. And again, he is very much in the minority numbers-wise. There's no one else around him who looks like him or in that area. You're like, how would you feel if you couldn't go play cards with the guys? How would you feel if you had to sit out here all the time and read books? All you can do is read books. You have no friends. You have no one around you. How would you feel? The guy goes nuts if he ain't got nobody. Don't make no difference who the guy is as long as he's with you. I'll tell you, a guy gets too lonely and he gets sick. And Lenny gets scared. He's like, well, George is going to come back. And Crooks says, I didn't mean to scare you. I know he'll come back. I was talking about myself. A guy sits alone out here at night, maybe reading books or thinking or stuff like that. Sometimes he gets thinking and he got no one to tell him what's so and what ain't, and maybe he sees something. He don't know whether it's right or not. And he can turn to some other guys if he sees it too. He can't tell. He's got nothing to measure by. I see things out here. I wasn't drunk. I don't know if I was asleep. If some guy was something, he could tell me I was asleep and I'd be all right, but I just don't know. Crooks is so lonely. And sometimes he sees something move out of the corner of his eye. He's in a stable. It's probably a mouse or something, but he doesn't know and he can't tell, and no one's there to confirm his fears. It's kind of like if you hear something go bump in the middle of the night and your siblings wake and you run down to their room and you're like, what was that? And you're like, you can bond together about it. Or it's hard to be alone and scared. It's easier to be afraid if there's someone with you to share that fear. And Crook's talking about how he's so alone all the time. He talks about being a kid and having the same brothers. And they weren't very wealthy. You weren't really allowed to be super wealthy in America in the 1930s if you were black. But B, they had 3 kids in the same bed. And they had an alfalfa patch. And this all of a sudden gets Lenny. And she's like, we're going to have alfalfa for our rabbits. The rabbits. And he was like, dude, you're crazy. And he was like, no, I'm not crazy. We're going to have rabbits in a berry patch. And Crook's like, you're nuts. Everyone comes in here and says that same damn thing all the time. They come in, they're going to get their own piece of land, and no one ever gets it. It's like heaven. It's a dream. It's not actually there. Everyone wants a little piece of land. No one gets to heaven, and no one gets any land. It's just in their head. They're all the time talking about it, but it's just in their head. Ooh. Ouch. Because this is Lenny's big dream. This is what he holds on to. This is what gives him hope. Every single day. That's what gives George hope. That's what gives Candy hope now, They have all this hope. And Crooks has no hope. None right now. None. He's sad. Sorry, y'all. My dog's in the background jumping at my cat. You see him? Oh, there we go again. Because the cat's teasing him. See her? Animal kingdom in my house this morning. It's been real fun, y'all. Now the other cat's hissing at him. I gotta go put him in his place so he doesn't get upset. So sorry for the brief distraction from mice and men. Hope you enjoy the brief moments looking at my pets, because this is my life when you are alone all day and you have animals in quarantine and everyone's going insane. Crooks is right. If you don't have someone to hang out with, it gets lonely. People go crazy. And my dog is feeling the effects as much as we are, believe it or not. Anyway, back to Of Mice and Men. Sorry for our brief hiatus. Oh my. Okay, so he talks about how everyone wants some heaven and they're always wanting it, but no one gets it. You're not going to have it. He tells Lenny, you're not going to have that. That's ridiculous. You're not going to get those things. It's just a dream. That's crap. It's made up. Hush. Sit down. Quit whining. It's like having a kid, y'all. It's ridiculous. Don't get a dog if you aren't prepared for this mess. Anyway, then Candy comes by because he was looking for Lenny. Crook's like, yeah, he's in here. And Candy stands at the door, and Candy knows. Hush. Candy knows that he's not supposed to be in Crooks' room. He's well aware of that. And Crooks invites him in because, like, well, everyone else is in here. Might as well join us. Being Crooks, Stop it. Y'all, I'm so sorry. I already put 14 minutes in this video. I'm not stopping it now, but this dog will not shut up. Lay down. So sorry, but bear with me. And if you need me to, like, just message me if you have questions, okay? So Candy tries to be nice. He's like, this is a nice place. It must be nice to have all the space to yourself. And Crooks is like, yeah, all to myself all the time. And that sucks. And he was like, I've never been in your room before, and I've been here a long time. And he said, that's because guys don't come into a color man's room very much. Slim comes in, though. Well, tell us more about Slim's character. Well, Slim doesn't care about the color of Crooks' skin. Slim treats him like a man. Not like a colored man, not like a white man, like a man, because Slim is good. Slim is probably one of the only people in here who's legitimately good. Slim is good, Lenny's good, George is good. That's kind of where things stop. But Lenny and Candy start telling Crooks about the rabbits. And Crooks is like, that's not going to happen. And the farm, right? And the Crooks is like, that's not going to happen. Currently, George is in the whorehouse. That's where he is right now. And it happens all the time, and it's not going to work out. And Kenny tells him basically, like, look, I've got money. We can make it happen. And Crooks says, wait, you actually have the money? He was like, yeah. Literally, at the end of this month, we'll have it ready. We have the land picked out. Like, we're doing this. This is real. And Crooks says, well, if you guys want a hand to work for nothing, I won't take any pay, just my keep, and I'd come lend a hand. I'm not so crippled I can't work. And Crooks has hope. Right there for a moment, that dream is so close. He can taste it. He wouldn't be alone anymore. He can contribute and be seen as an equal. Because let's be honest, it's kind of a ragtag group of men, right? You got Candy, who's old and has one hand. Lenny with a severe mental disability. George is just kind of a jerk sometimes. And you've got Crooks, who's already seen as an outsider of society. And he has a physical disability as well. And he realizes, I could go there and just be a person. Not a black person, not a person who's different, but just a person. Because everyone there is different. And he has this beautiful, bubbling hope. You can see it as he gets excited. And then Curly's wife comes in. And they're saying, she asks if you guys seen Curly. They're like, no, Curly's not here. And he tells her that Curly's in town. Now, it's very obvious where the boys are right now. They're at a cat house, okay? And now, George just went to pastime. He's not spending any money because he's very careful. But how would you, if you had just been recently married, how would it feel to know that your new husband was with a prostitute? Okay. So she was like, you know what? They left the weak ones here. Because even though, so again, guys, this is about power and control and what it looks like. Because Curly's wife, as a woman, she's got nothing. Nothing. They don't even give her a name. She's lonely all the time. There's no other women there. She has no friends. You've seen how the men treat her. And the more she tries to talk to them, the more they think that she's a flirt. And they push her off, and they're mean. And she has no power. But she's in a room with an old man, a black man, and a man with a mental disability. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to take this minute to have some power. Because they're mean to her. They're really mean to her. And they basically tell her she's a slut. And she's like, yeah, I've got a husband. You've all seen him. Swell guy, isn't he? Spends all his time saying what he's going to do to guys he don't like. No, he don't like nobody. You think I'm going to stay in that 2x4 house? Listen to how Curly's going to lead with his left twice, then bring in the old right cross 1-2. He said just a 1-2 and he'll go down. Tell us a little bit what it's like to live with Curly. A little bit of what it's like to deal with a man who doesn't care about you, doesn't love you. He doesn't talk to her. He talks at her about people he wants to beat up. But he's not even willing to beat people up because he's a coward. But he doesn't care about her. He doesn't love her. He doesn't spend time with her. And she feels that. She feels unloved and uncared for. And no one is nice when they feel unloved and uncared for. When you're already unhappy, it's a lot easier to stay unhappy. And then she asks, hey, what happened to Curly's hand? And they're all looking at each other and getting embarrassed. Got caught in a machine. She says, that's crap. That's crap. Who busted him? He said, got caught in a machine. She said, okay, sure. Don't talk to me about it. Cover it up if you want. What do I care? You bindle bums think you're so damn good. What do you think I am, a kid? I told you I could have went with the shows, not just one neither. You guys want to put me in pictures? Saturday night, everybody out there doing something. Everybody. And what am I doing? Sitting here talking to a bunch of bindle stiffs. A nigger and a dum-dum and a lousy old sheep, and I'm liking it because ain't nobody else. She says, I could have been famous. I could have been in pictures, meaning she could have been in the movies. She was thrilled about that. So was Fletcher. She could have been in the movies. She could have been all these different things. And instead, it's Saturday night, and she's stuck in that barn with the outcasts, with the losers, with people who don't want to be there. And that is sad. She feels useless. And when you feel useless, you're not nice. So they tell her, get out. You're not wanted here. You're a floozy. Get out. We don't want you. You can get us fired. I don't want that. Get out. Get away from here. And Crook says, we have our own land and we can do it and it's going to be great. Okay? Y'all, this dog. Sorry. He says, we can do it. We could be in this place. It's going to be great. We can make all this happen. We need you to get out of here. She says, okay, please. You're not going to have this dream. That's not going to happen for you. And they start yelling at her. Get out of here. We don't like you. We don't like we don't want we don't like your husband. We don't want you here. Get out. And then she sees all the bruises on Lenny's face and she goes, what happened to your face? And Lenny said, he got his hand caught in a machine. Because he's Lenny and being subtle isn't exactly his strong suit. She was like, oh, and she gets it. She's like, oh, okay. You're the machine. You're the machine. I get it now. I understand. The machine beat up Curly, right? And then she gets it. And Crook is like, get out of here. Just get out. Like, leave me alone. Get out of here. This is ridiculous. And he's like, I'm going to ask the boss to never let you come in the barn anymore. And then she loses it. And she's really unkind. And she directly calls him the N-word. Not just as a reference, but a very direct insult. You know what I can do if you open your trap? And he looked at her and he sits down and she goes, do you know what I can do? And he keeps leaning back into the wall and he says, yes, ma'am, a very small voice. So then keep your faith, then keep your place. I can get strung up on a tree so easy it ain't even funny. That's awful. That's horrible. That's heartbreaking. Because she's not wrong. All it would take is for her to say he tried to touch her. All it would take is for her to try to say he raped her, he hurt her, or thought about it, or tried to, or something. And that would be the end for Crooks. There would be no fair trial. There would be no arrests made. It would be a lynching. And that would be that. That would be it. And she leaves. Well, she goes to leave. And Kenny says, if you do that, we'll tell on you. We'll make sure everyone knows what you did. She's like, no, I'm going to believe you. You're an old man. He's black and he's stupid. No one's going to believe you guys. That's it. That's the end. And they all agree, you know what? No one's going to listen to us. And this is the moment where the hope leaves. And there's a huge shift in the atmosphere of the room. The whole thing changes. And she leaves. And Crooks is like, you guys should get out. I don't want you here anymore. And you made me forget. You coming here talking about this farm made me forget about what things actually happen. And she says, what she said was true. Now leave. And they hear George come in, and Lenny's like, oh, good, George is here. And Crook says, hey, guys, remember what I said about working on the farm and helping out? And they're like, yeah. He said, just forget it. I didn't mean it. I'm just fooling. I wouldn't want to go to no place like that. So I'm sorry that you feel that way. Good night. And then Crook sits down on the bunk and resumes to rubbing in the liniment on his back. This chapter begins the exact same way it ends, right? It starts with him rubbing his back, it ends with him rubbing his back. And all the stuff in the middle that happened, basically when an author does that, it means that nothing changed. Candy and Lenny walk in and they offer this beautiful thing to Crooks and he gets a taste of hope. He's so excited and he's so happy, and they have a few fleeting moments of real excitement and real joy because they could all live out their dreams. Because hope, they call it the thing that floats, but it really does change things for people. They're so excited. And Curly's wife comes in and just pops that bubble real quick. But you really can't blame her. No one speaks to her. Her husband's awful. And she comes in to chat and they all tell her to get out and she's a slut. And so she gets angry and realizes this is her only chance to put out her power against these people, because if you have no power, you want power. You want to change something. You want to make adjustments. And if you can't, it leaves you unhappy and miserable. And when you feel unhappy and miserable and unloved and unwanted, you are not a nice person. That's something to bear in mind when you encounter someone who's a jerk. How do they feel to have to act like that? Curly's wife is dealing with a lot. It's hard to be the only woman on a ranch. It's hard to be alone. We'll get more of her story later, but she felt like she had a great future and then is relegated to this. And that's really hard for her. And she's having a hard time. So the only thing she can think to do is make everyone else have a hard time too. She ruins their hope. And Crook says, never mind. I forgot for just a minute what it was like, but it's not worth it because I can't do that. I'm never going to be a person who can go work on a farm and be free. And no, that's not for me. And that's it. The chapter ends the exact same way it started, because despite all their dreaming, nothing changed. Told you it wasn't going to be a very happy story. But for your positive note, there's the dog laying on the ground because he tried to drive me nuts this entire video. So sorry for all the interruptions. Sorry this video is kind of long, but I hope you pay attention to this one. It's going to be really important in our discussions coming up. Love you. Mean it.